Welcome to the Card Pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And I enjoy that theme music. And today we are doing a magic moment. We'll be looking at the set that just recently came out.
Yes, Theros, Beyond Death.
And what we'll be doing in
cool.
this segment is we will be talking about 3 cards that we enjoy, the 3 cards that are the money at the time when we're recording all this, and the set mechanics.
Yep, just a general look at the set overall. And this is a good one. I like this one.
Yeah, this set's
like
kind
this
of
one
interesting. There's a few cards that we're really stoked about, and we will tell you why. So let's wait no further with our number 3s. And Kyle, I will be a generous man and have you start off.
All right, well, we're going to number 3 here on our Hidden Gems abbreviated list. So my, of course, number 3 had to be Oracle of Thassa. This is probably one of the most talked about cards from this entire release. And there's very little question why, because, you know, just what we needed in this game was another version of Laboratory Maniac that's even better than Laboratory Maniac.
This is where you and I are very different, but read the card before we start to...
Well, it's 2 mana, 2 double blue. It's for a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, you look at the top X cards of your deck, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to 1 of them on top of your deck, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your deck, you win the game. Think about that for a minute.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, it's Scry 2 right off the bat because it has 2 blue and its mana cost for its devotion. And I'll tell you why this is, in fact, better than Laboratory Maniac. Lab Maniac's ability only works, you know, when you draw a card and you have no other cards in your deck. You have to play it out and then wait for a very specific circumstance, or you have to play it out in response to that circumstance and hope nobody can stop it. This, on the other hand, cannot be stopped in the same way. You just do it, and you win. If people can't stop you from doing it, they just win the game.
The problem is devotion. Like, you can't trick the devotion out, really. Like,
it doesn't matter. You don't need devotion for this to be good. All you have to do is have no deck and play this, and you win.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, where it's compared to Laboratory Maniac, where it's like, it's not as restricted. Like, it's not as easy to mess up in that regard. And inherently, you can blink this, and with the new Thassa, we see that blinking is a little bit more accessible in mono blue. You have stuff like Conjurer's Closet and stuff like that out there. So the blinking is actually very useful, and even for like a Brago deck, this would be pretty nice for it. And I don't disagree with you with that. The only problem is just that, well, it can be a little situational. Like, there's more times that I feel like you would want Laboratory Maniac on the field, and then you go nuts.
I feel entirely the opposite, because Lab Maniac is literally only useful if you're trying to win the game with him. Thassa's Oracle is good at any stage of the game, regardless of whether you're trying to win or not.
And that's what makes it a little different. But I don't know. I
don't
run infinite combos as much, so this is definitely his round.
It's not even really a combo. It's like a 1-card combo. And if you pay attention to competitive Commander at all, they're going nuts over this card there. Like, it is now the win condition of pretty much every single deck that has blue in it. So that just shows you how powerful this card is.
It shows you how bad blue is.
Right.
But moving on to my number 3, into a different color that people have been screaming about recently, white. My number 3 is going to Eidolon of Obstruction. Now, this is a 2-drop, 1 generic, and a white spirit enchantment creature that has a 2/1 body. It has first strike, which is pretty decent right there, but it also makes it so that it has a restriction for planeswalkers. Loyalty abilities of planeswalkers your opponents control cost 1 more to activate. Now, the reason I like this, because it doesn't seem like it's anything crazy.
Yeah, it's
but the thing is that this is inherently changing one thing of the game that we have been accustomed to. Planeswalkers usually get their effects for free, and they usually have an ability to get them possibly even multiple times for free, depending on what kind of stuff you're building with it, like a Chain Veil, for example. This now says, hey, you know that effect you really want to use? It'd be a shame if you just cast your Planeswalker and don't have enough mana left over to use it. This really throws the tempo off of that kind of deck, especially if it's Super Friends and they're using multiple effects per turn. They have to have an answer to this. Now, this being both an enchantment and a creature, it's, you know, a little bit easier to kill, especially if it's facing like a green deck. But it's just so unique for the fact that this is inherently something that's, well, now change the game.
Yeah, I'm always down for new enchantment creatures. I love that aspect of the Theros sets. And outside the Immortal Sun, this is probably one of the only direct forms of Planeswalker hate we have.
Yeah.
Because the taxation of Planeswalker abilities really slows them down and makes them a lot less efficient. It's no longer just free value. You have to actually think before activating them. It's decent stats, too. 2/1 first strike for 2 is pretty good. It's kind of in the hate bears category of creatures.
100%.
You would play in a deck like
it's
that.
It's just not a 2/2 to be the bear category.
That said, I don't see myself going out of my way to play this in decks. It's a sideboard card.
Yes,
it really is.
I agree with that. And I mean, white runs a lot of like sideboardy kind of stuff, or if it's running enchantments, this now hits the build for it. But the thing that's just unusual for it, where it's like something like a Hex Parasite, which like inconsequentially just accidentally happen to be good against Planeswalkers. This one's meant to be bad for Planeswalkers.
Right.
And that's just something that's like we haven't truly seen yet.
That's true. So,
but you're number 2, Kyle. Is it better than this?
Right. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. My number 2 is Gravebreaker Lamia. Now, this is a card I absolutely love. It's another enchantment creature. Costs 5 mana, 4 generic, and 1 black for a Snake Lamia. You don't see many of those.
You don't see a single Lamia.
There's 4/4. And then it has lifelink as well. When it enters the battlefield, you search your deck for a card, any card, put it into your graveyard, and then shuffle your deck. And of course, spells you cast from your graveyard also now cost 1 generic less to cast. So I'm going to go back to one of my old school favorite cards from Shards of Alara. We talked about it way back, called Corpse Connoisseur, which is basically a zombie for this exact same mana cost, smaller body. When it came into play, you dump any creature from your graveyard into, from your deck into your graveyard. This gets any card from your deck into your graveyard. You can throw out a Dread Return, for example, which is just one of many awesome things you can do. It's bigger, it has lifelink, it has more types, and it has this additional spells cost 1 less to cast from your graveyard. That's crazy. Like, how is this not an awesome card?
And also,
really?
This is really cool because like when they had flashback, like they had stuff that reduced the flashback cost, but it's super niche because it's like, all right, I have like 2 flashback cards, and yeah, it'd be nice to lower the cost of them, but who cares? But this doesn't just care about a type. This works for Embalm. This works for Flashback. This works for
creatures that just get cast from your graveyard. A bunch of zombies do that.
Yeah, and also it lowers the cost by 1 for that. It's so good. It's almost an unintuitive tutor for the fact that it's like, all right, it's tutoring to the grave, which you usually assume to be bad, but in Black, they're the only group that thinks it's great.
Well, historically, Buried Alive and Entomb would say that you're wrong.
Yeah, so. No, I agree, but only in Black. You wouldn't really see this much unless you're maybe doing Dredge or maybe...
If you're putting cards directly into the graveyard, you're doing something dumb with them. So, yeah, this is a little
counterintuitive.
Great addition to that pantheon of cards.
But a solid card. It's more or less like a medallion for the grave now, which is something to note, 100% something to note. But moving on to my number 2, if you don't mind me stealing it. I'm staying away from color this time, but actually going for an equipment. It's called Shadow Spear, and if you've been looking at this set, you might have caught this eye. This might have caught your eye, my bad. It is a 1-drop equipment. It's a legendary artifact at that, and it has a little bit of a box here. So you can go ahead and equip this for 2 generic mana. And the equipped creature goes ahead and gets +1/1 and has trample and lifelink. So pretty darn good right there. But also it has the second effect for 1 generic. Permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructibility until the end of the turn. That second effect there is something that we haven't seen on an equipment. Typically, equipments need to go ahead and have themselves equipped onto a body, and then you can use this effect. This is one of the few times that we've actually seen this, where it's like, hey, this can just be on the field and stopping the ability for the hexproof, stopping the effect of the indestructibility.
Right. Umezawa's G-Tag can also do things when it's not equipped, and it's one of the very few equipments that can. So you know that's in a powerful group of cards when that's what you compare this to.
One of the strongest, I think that you could say that is
the strongest equipment in the game. Absolutely it is.
So this right here, honestly, it could just be a 1 that equips for 2, and it has that effect onto it, and it'd still be good. Giving the extra bonus to a creature is also super great. And this is something that's great for anything that it loves targeted removal. Like for me, I always say I have a Hirobi Death's Whale deck. This is great for not only getting rid of the hexproof on it, but the indestructibility, which usually ends up being a thorn in that deck's side.
Well, of course, this being Theros, this is pretty much the obligatory anti-god card for Theros. Although, something that makes me really upset about this is why doesn't it give the creature Death Touch? It would be so intuitive to give the creature Death Touch.
Not for that mana cost.
And yet we have Trample and Lifelink? Like, what is that? I don't get that.
As a green player, I'm very happy. But actually, let's pull this up one more time. I'm just going to note something for this. How tutorable this really is. It's a 1-drop artifact, so that's Trinket Mage right there.
Yep.
It is an equipment, so it's an equipment tutor. It is an artifact tutor. And lastly, it's legendary. There's 4 flat-out specific type card tutors that work for this equipment. Flat out. That is not something that we can really say exists for many cards.
Well, and for what a low cost it is and the advantages you get, this is absolutely a slam dunk for any equipment deck. It just needs to be there.
I agree. It's definitely a card to pick up a copy of while it's cheap now.
However, like I said, while Trample and Lifelink are great abilities, I don't get it. It seems like a big flavor fail to me.
Kyle, there's so many things on so many levels of my being that are just upset with you. This is just adding to it.
Don't be dramatic.
I'm not being dramatic. I'm just being honest.
Well, let's go on to my number 1 here.
It's a good card, though. It really is.
Yeah,
but number 1, what do you got for us?
All right, well, number 1 for me is another black card, and this one is Woe Strider, which I keep telling people is hands down the best card of this set. You cannot argue that.
I will totally argue that with you.
Anyway, it is a 3-drop creature, 2 colorless, 1 black, a horror. 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 white goat creature token. So that's pretty cool right there. Sacrifice another creature, scry 1, free sack outlet. Also, it has the new ability Escape. So for 5 mana right there, and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard, you can cast it from your graveyard with that escape cost. And when it does escape, it comes into play with 2 extra +1/+1 counters on it.
Yes.
So, like I said, black definitely got pretty much all the best cards in this new set, namely the new Erebos, the new Pelucranos, which is only part black, but still.
We're staying on one card. There's no way we can talk about all these points right here.
But I had to skip over all of those more obvious ones to name this, as I said, the best card of the set. Because remember Viscera Seer? You know how good that card is?
It's a very good card.
This is Viscera Seer, but better.
Way better, and I do agree with you with that.
Just imagine how crazy that idea just is, thinking about it.
This doesn't even need to produce a goat.
To be good.
No, the goat doesn't need to even be there. Getting the counters on it doesn't even need to be there. It just needs the escape and then the sack to scry, and it's still just incredible for this. It's not as much value, but it's just that incredible.
Yeah, it's a Viscera Seer that makes another body, is bigger, is actually combat relevant, and brings itself back from the graveyard.
Yes.
The only thing you could say, and has a free sack outlet tacked onto it, which I'm pretty sure Wizards promised they weren't going to do anymore.
Yeah, they lied.
But anyway, the point is that the only strike against this card is that it can't sacrifice itself. But when you think about everything that this can do, that seems extremely irrelevant.
It does. It really does. And also for the fact, if you escape with this and it goes back to the grave, it's not exiled. This can be escaped out again.
No, that's why Escape is pretty good.
And Escape is super strong for that reason. And that actually ties into my next card, which we did not plan, of why Escape is super duper strong.
Well, let's go on to that card.
All right, so my number 1, which is better, is called Underworld Breach. Now, this is an enchantment that costs 2 mana. It is a generic and a red, and it reads, each non-land card in your graveyard has Escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's converted mana cost, and in addition, you have to exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Then, lastly, it has the effect of, at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this card. Sacrifice, not exile. So this card will go to the grave and can be brought back, which is super strong, being an enchantment and not a sorcery or an instant. This is like a more on steroids Past in Flames that we have seen. Past in Flames is good because it can return instants and sorceries, not planeswalkers, not creatures, not enchantments. So this opens up the roundhouse to that. And this also can't sack itself. I mean, this also doesn't exile itself. So let's say this, so Kyle and I argued this card for an hour and a half the first time we saw it. Him saying it's not the best card. We won't do that for the sake of argument, but I will point out the features that I say that makes the thing so great, because it enables really stupid things. Stupid as in awesomely, incredibly, and fun until you're facing it. So a card that exists is Mana Geyser, right? This is a ritual type card. You pay 5 mana, and then for each land that's tapped, you produce that much mana that your opponents possess. So it's not based off of your land cap. So for 5 mana, and if it's turn 5, and we'll say it's generic math of just slow magic, each person has 5 lands, except for the green player. But we'll still say 5 lands are tapped from each person. So you pay 5, you get 15 mana. That goes to the grave. You use 2 of that mana to play Underworld Breach. Okay, follow me. You use 5 of that mana there to go ahead and use that to create a whole bunch more mana. So it's like a red Cabal Coffers right here. You play out stuff, play out your deck with all this mana. As long as you are able to draw cards and put stuff out, you'll fill the grave, keep recasting it. You can inherently go through your entire deck, play out whatever you want, and keep reusing the stuff. Now, if this card ends up going to the grave, you can reuse it later and bring it back into play with like anything that can bring back enchantments, anything that's green that brings anything back from the grave. It's just, I'm running out of breath. So there's so much you can do with this, and the thing is like, it's not restricted to a type. It's not restricted to any particular archetype. This is just red value for 2 mana.
Well, and like we said, we do disagree about this card. I am so torn over whether or not I like this. It clearly has a lot of potential, as you've said.
Yes.
However, like red recursion is something that never happens,
No.
especially across all types, which I could see this, I mean, just on a very small scale, the possibility for burn decks to become more powerful by recycling all of their burn spells, which is a capability they have never had before. Is this a new red staple, as Stu would suggest? I don't know. I really don't know. As much as I want to like it, I have to be the skeptic. I just have to be.
It's fair to be the skeptic.
And it feels like one of those magical Christmas land cards. Yes, there are fun things you can do with it, but they rely on a very specific set of circumstances that are almost never going to happen.
I will say, though, we have a land that can recur this now. We have a way to return enchantments from the grave, which I will say could be foreshadowing for what we can see for Boros in the future, which is something that this
it would be
really
very
does
promising.
need.
Yeah.
So
it is. Can it be great? Yes. And this plus Sundial the Infinite leads to fun times. But
your definition of fun, maybe.
You need a large grave and you need a lot of mana to capitalize on this, which is why I put it in the Heb the Eternal.
It works.
So and however, I am starting to be maybe proven wrong because there is a deck on the rise in competitive Magic with this using the Lotus Field land to cause a lot of storm things. I'm not really that familiar with it, but this is one of the cards that makes it all work. So, am I going to be proven wrong in time about this? It's possible.
100%.
It's possible. But I just don't think it's quite as good as you might think it is. It is pretty good.
Would you say
not that
it's
good.
better than Past in Flames?
It's really debatable and subjective. I don't know.
All right. Well, while Kyle is having an enema of thought, let us know yours up here. We'll do a poll of is this better than Past in Flames? And also, if you would use this card in a deck, let us know down below what you think it shines.
All right. Well,
but now we will.
Yeah, we've talked about those for a long
time. We talked
enough.
about R3. That was the fastest we could have done that. We're sorry. But we will talk about the money cards now. And Kyle, I think you'll start us off.
All right. Well, if we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up this time. So for $17 at our number 3 slot, our abbreviated money cards is one of the new gods, Healy Odd, Sun Crowned. And by new gods, I mean old gods, because they took the 5 major gods and pretty much redid them.
Missed the old other ones.
Yeah, but this one is, let's face it, the better version of Healy Odd. So he's not my personal favorite of the new gods. However, the reason he's on the money card list is because he's the best competitively.
Yeah.
Not only is he the shot in the arm that white aggro needs in the current metagame format, but in larger formats, he has Walking Ballista to play with. And Walking Ballista plus this is just a straight-up infinite you-win-the-game combo.
Which everyone's been screaming about all online for that. It wasn't subtle, Wizards.
No, not at all.
And inherently, you can use Triskelion and this the same way how you would with Mikaeus in the sense. It's just now, instead of doing that dumb stuff in black, you could do it in white.
Yep.
So Orzhov,
it's very
good at ya.
It's interesting. I mean, if you were trying to make white more viable, I guess this is a good start. I don't know.
I don't know viable. It just makes it more appealing, but it's still very narrow.
White historically is a terrible color, so we just
that's no 8.5 tails.
But of all of the colors of Magic you can use, white is always the worst. Always the worst.
Avacyn, any of the Avacyns, Flip Avacyn, I guess it's Boros, but it still needs a lot of white.
It has some great advantages, sure, but of all the colors, it is absolutely the weakest on its own.
Hate bears.
White is the weakest. I'm sorry, but it's true.
Whatever. Number 2.
Yes, let's go on to number 2 here.
Card I am super stoked about and am getting. It is a Nix Bloom Ancient. It is around $18 as of now. We'll see if that price will sit there. It is an elemental creature that costs 7 mana, 4 generic, and 3 green for an elemental enchantment creature with a 5/5 body. It has trample, but the biggest thing about this is if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times that amount of mana instead. So your lands produce 3. And actually, if
your mana rocks produce 3, your creatures produce 3.
Yeah. Also, Cabal Coffers produces how much now?
Yeah, like
a lot.
Yeah. So
or even what's your devotion count one? Nyx.
Yeah, Nykthos is
dumb.
I can't. I'm bad at math. I'm not even gonna try to do that.
And actually, if you really want to see stupid math, mana reflection on the field with this.
Yeah. This is a better mana reflection because it only costs 1 more mana. It gives you, again, double the amount of mana. And it may be weaker because it's easier to remove, but it's still pretty great.
Yeah, there's ways to cheat this in, and that's actually one of the things to note. Flash Hulk was originally the thing that you used with Flash. Flash Nix Bloom is great because actually if you have enough lands out, so you need 2 mana to play Flash, right? So for those who don't know Flash, you pay 2 mana to blue instant. That makes it so you put a creature from your hand into play. And then you have to pay the difference of mana, otherwise you sacrifice it. So if you don't have the mana cap to do that, you can still tap your lands and float the mana and use it for that turn.
Yep.
So it's almost like a pseudo ritual. However, depending how many lands you have out, you might have enough to actually keep this guy out then. And that'd be, well, how many? All right, so you need 2 lands to do that, and then he costs 7, so you need 3 lands?
Yeah.
So turn 5, you can keep this guy out at instant speed on an opponent's turn, and then when it comes to you, have a whopping amount of mana. It's just insane.
Well, that's assuming you haven't played any mana rocks or anything like that.
Yeah, anything else.
It could be even earlier.
So you need at least 5 mana to make that viable. So just keep that in thought. But yeah, this is something elemental tribal, mono green, just big, awesome, good stuff. It's there.
Mono green. This is like I looked at this and I was like, they did what now? Like, really?
Or just imagine the amazing play. Turn 1 entomb this. Turn 2 reanimate.
Yeah.
How fast you going to beat your opponents now?
Yeah, this is crazy. This card is nuts.
It's really nuts. I'm stoked about it, though. But either way, on to our number 1, the tippy top.
Our number 1 here, so coming in at $22 so far, the number 1 card for the set is Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. And this is a little more off the beaten path, but it's, again, most of these early prices are because things are popular in Standard and other competitive formats. Not so much in Commander, but this might just get there at some point. So he's a 6/6 for 3 mana, and he's blue and green, which immediately, makes you think, wow, something's going on here.
Yeah.
But he is a legendary Elder Giant, and when he enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice him unless he escaped. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life, draw a card, and then can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. And he has that escape ability for 2 green and 2 blue, and exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard.
This is a handful and a mouthful of a card. It's honestly, the Titans, I'd say, almost outshined the gods in this, which is kind of the point of like.
I'm just mad there's only 2 of them. Like, what happened there? Really? You aren't going to give us more than 2 Titans?
Dude, all right. Well, we already complained about just 5 gods, and you had to do all this other stuff with demigods. People are upset Hercules isn't it, so I can understand. I just think they should have done it in a couple more sets.
Yeah.
However,
oh well.
Either way, it's still impressive for what they did. So this guy right here, it's awesome as a commander because it has the ability to avoid the command tax, Which
Yes,
is
it does.
something to note. Also being in green and blue has a lot of shenanigans with sacking. If anyone's seen the Command Zone episode where they've gone ahead and made a deck with this and it competed, you can see how it's pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, well, just that, ETB or attack, you 3 life, a card, and a land, that's really good. And plus, as you said, even if you're escaping it, for basically 4 mana, it's a 6/6.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Yeah, you don't see that too often. It's worth a mythic. Is it too much on a card? Maybe.
I don't know. It's great in all kinds of graveyard-based decks, too. Dredge decks, Sultai decks, like a Sidisi, for example.
But the thing is that there's no black in it, which is truly the one thing. Like, we do see the other one where it is red-black, and which is a little bit more different.
Unfortunately, not very good with its other abilities. This is definitely the better of the Titans.
I would have really loved to see if we actually had a Boros Titan.
Well,
that would have been impressive.
They've said if we ever do go back to Theros again, they may make more Titans. So we'll see. We'll see.
I'd hope
I would
so.
like that, though.
But moving off of this card, that is the final one of the money. Our last little segment before we bid adieu is we're going to talk about the new mechanics that we are seeing from the sets.
And this one we're going to start off with Escape.
Which we've already kind of dove into a good bit for on my card and the other one, so we'll quickly just touch upon it for a quick second. We have Underworld Rage Hound for an example here.
Yeah.
So pretty much, if a card has Escape, it has a mana cost to go ahead and do that. And in addition, you have to go ahead and exile a certain amount of cards from your graveyard to even be able to effectively make the card escape. Really good, really solid for making so all colors now pretty much have a form of recursion from the grave that is repeatable. And honestly, it's almost kind of like throwing off the color pie a little bit.
It is, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, I mean, subjectively, do I like this ability? Yeah, I do.
100%.
But objectively, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know how I feel about this.
I don't even know what objectively means in this case.
I just, like, it does, like you said, I feel like it does break the color pie, even unintentionally. Giving red something as good as an Underworld Breach really shouldn't probably happen. So
I don't know.
I don't know. Is it also a strike against it? Is that I don't really find it that original or interesting at all. We have a million different mechanics that bring things back from the graveyard.
I think it's original.
So
just outside of black, it's very inside of black, and you're a very black boy.
I mean, well. All right.
You are a blue-black player at the very least.
Anyway, I don't know. Like, I mean, is this good? Yes. Is it original? Not really. But whatever. Can't argue with good cards,
So now
I
moving
guess.
on to the second mechanic that we now would be talking about for the first time,
right,
is Devotion, more or less. And we saw this originally when we went to Theros. We're going to look at a card here called Daxos, Blessed by the Sun.
I am so happy that Devotion is back. You have no idea.
What Devotion is pretty much you look at the permanents on your field that aren't lands, and you look at their CMC cost. And if in there you see the mana symbols for whatever color that they are caring about, you count that all up, and that value is associated to something. Now, in this case, it's actually devoted towards Daxos's toughness.
Yeah, so he by himself is already a 2/2 because there are 2 white symbols in his converted mana cost. For each one, he'll add an additional one on there. This also, I picked this because it also kind of covers another theme of this set, enchantment creatures.
Yes.
Or enchantment permanents, like things that are not enchantments but are also enchantments. So that covers yet another thing in this set, which is awesome.
Which we saw originally in Theros, which was, like, we've seen artifact creatures, which is what Mirrodin kind of blew people's minds. Like, what? Yeah. It's an artifact, and it's a creature.
Right.
What?
And, well, I'm really excited and yet kind of nervous to see Devotion come back, because historically Devotion has been really, really powerful.
Very much so.
I mean, Grey Merchant, Gary,
but this
his name's Gary, is one of the most powerful cards ever printed in black. So
he's a merchant.
It's just, I mean,
he doesn't have a tan.
These cards are just crazy.
But also, this is the first time we're actually seeing Devotion used outside of like an enabling effect. So this one actually goes ahead and we're seeing it for power and toughness for creatures. Whereas last time it was more or less a mana cap or some sort of like X effect where it's like...
Right.
So now they're actually using it in a different form. So even though we have seen Devotion before, it's got a fresh twist.
A little bit, yeah.
But now moving away from that and also the enchantment creature effect for
Yes.
it, we do see another return of something which is Constellation. And we'll look at a card called Cetacean Champion?
Cetacean, yeah.
Nah, it's what I said. No, you got it. All right, but go for it, Kyle. You're making a Constellation deck, enlighten the people.
All right, well, Cetacean Champion here is one of an example of Constellation cards, which showed up in the original Theros block late into the block, and is now back in this set. So the ability is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, something happens. In this case, getting a counter and drawing a card.
Yeah.
But notably, it is not a cast effect, it is an ETB effect.
Which is very
Which makes
strong.
it a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And there are cards like this one. I mean, every time you play an enchantment, you draw a card. That's basically, it's really good.
Enchantress based.
So, yeah. So
but in a new style.
It continues to irritate me because I don't understand why this has to be a keyword mechanic. You really don't have to make it a keyword.
See, I'm happy that it's a keyword, but they haven't just kind of like revitalized it. And it's like, it's not Constellation anymore, it's Aurora or something, you know? Because like they've done that before where it's like they've came up with the same mechanic and just scratched off the name and wrote a different one over top of it. So I don't mind that in the slightest. At least they're being real with it. You know?
It had to come back because it's very powerful. It's also very Theros. And it's basically one of the most popular things to come out of the original Theros. Everybody liked it so much that they were retroactively angry that it didn't exist in the first two sets.
Yeah.
So...
Well, and the funny thing is about... Yeah, that's what they were screaming about. They loved it, but they were very angry that there was literally a shortage
and
of what it could do.
Yeah, it didn't exist in the prior two sets, which made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's great. Again, good thing to have back.
Although, I will give Wizards a kudos point because they've tried to do a lot of, I guess, fan service in the sense where they're trying to make it so a lot of stuff that we've been screaming for, they actually try to deliver it, but they also try to give us some new stuff. So this set kind of feels a little cramped for how much is going on.
It does. There's a lot going on in here.
Yeah, because we're not even talking about demigods being creature types now. Like,
yeah.
We would like to, but like, if we talked about every little niche of something going on, like wasn't there hybrid mana symbols in this too?
No hybrid. But
that was the previous one. Yeah,
but anyway,
there's a lot of little things. But the
one
final
more thing
one
to talk about, and this is something again I am so happy that this came back.
Then tell them about it.
Sagas. So if everyone remembers these kind of enchantments from Dominaria, when they come into play, they get a counter on them, and every draw step they get another counter on them, and different abilities happen for each phase, and then they sacrifice themselves after the third one happens.
And these work so well with the whole enchantment theme. The only thing I'm upset about is how you said it's Saga, not Saga. But you didn't have a singer growing up, so I guess not.
Yeah, still though, Sagas were really, really cool when they first showed up in Dominaria, and they were like
the versatility on them.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is one of those things where, like vehicles, it could come back in a lot of different ways, but you have to be very precise about the world that you put them in. They have to make sense flavor-wise.
Yes.
And anywhere other than Dominaria, where else could this come back but Theros? Because, like, come on.
Tradition and
home
everything
run
else like
flavor-wise.
Well, I don't know. If we end up ever going back to, like, I don't know, Zendikar would make sense because there's so much that's happened there, or in Mirrodin. Or if we ever have something with Phyrexians again,
potentially.
or Eldrazi. So they have a potential lineup. It's something new, it's something fresh. We'll have to see how they take the reins on this bad boy. But very fun, very useful, and you're always very tempted about using them. And in fact, since we're seeing Sagas some more, it makes it so like, all right, maybe we'll see Historic come back into play again because that
I would hope so.
The whole Saga thing as well.
These are cool enchantments. They play well with Proliferate and those kind of things. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with Sagas. Like I said, they were one of my favorite things from Dominaria. So I'm really glad Wizards sees the value in them and is going to continue to use them.
I didn't care for them. But either way, I'm cool to have some more of them. It's all good. But that is going to conclude our magic moment, our quick little brief touch on Theros. Forget the little end part of that title. But
Beyond Death.
Beyond
That's
Death.
what it is. Makes sense.
That's our opinions on it. Let us know yours. The set's been out for a good bit of time now, so hopefully you're a little bit more fluent with where you think cards should lie and if we are wrong or right. So be sure to let us know all your opinions. You can reach us on so many forms of social media.
Yes, we're all over the place. We've got Reddit, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we have Tapped Out where you can see all of our deck lists, and of course you can email us all of it at TheCardPool. So keep that in mind.
Yep, at Gmail. And also to know, we are sponsored by, not sponsored, we have an affiliate link with TCG Player, so if any of these cards we're talking about appease you, or you're looking through the set now to try to find some stuff for your decks, be sure to use our link. It helps the channel, it lets TCG Player know that you like what we got.
And they help us in return, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, so please be sure to do that, and until then, I'm Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool. Underworld Breach, man. You'll eat those words.
I don't know. Maybe I will. We'll see. We'll see.